The glass tower at the corner of 5th and Madison never slept. Its lights burned through midnight, through 2 a.m., through the grey silence before dawn, because Eliza Morgan demanded nothing less. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small moments to change lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories. Also, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? She was 38 years old, the founder and CEO of Nexus AI, a company worth $4 billion and climbing, and she had not taken a vacation in 6 years. Her staff feared her and admired her in equal measure. She moved through the office like a current of electricity, precise, purposeful, and entirely unreachable. She had built the world's most elegant emotion recognition software, a system that could detect human feeling from the micro movements of a face, the cadence of a voice, the slight tremor of a breath. It was beautiful, revolutionary, and deeply ironic, because the one thing Eliza Morgan had never been able to do was feel. Lucas Carter arrived at Nexus AI on a Tuesday morning in November, pushing a grey cleaning cart that squeaked slightly on the left wheel. He was 41, broad-shouldered, with calloused hands and dark eyes that watched everything carefully without ever drawing attention to themselves. He wore the standard grey uniform of Brightline Janitorial, services and a small pin on his collar shaped like a paper airplane, something his 7-year-old daughter, Maya, had made for him and insisted he wear every day for good luck. He worked the executive floor from 5 in the morning until 9, moving through the offices like a shadow, restoring order to the chaos of ambition that always accumulated overnight. Nobody spoke to him. Nobody really saw him. He preferred it that way. He had learned in a previous life that invisibility had its own kind of power. Eliza's office occupied the entire northeast corner of the 42nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city, and on clear mornings the light came in gold and clean, bouncing off the glass desk that held nothing but a laptop, a single white coffee cup, and a framed photograph turned face down. Nobody had ever seen what was in that photograph. Lucas had cleaned around it every morning for 3 weeks. He did not touch it. Some things he understood were not meant to be disturbed. That same week, he had found a stack of printed emails in her recycling bin, not his business to read, but impossible not to notice the words at the top of one page. Board meeting Thursday. Proposal to remove Eliza Morgan as CEO. Unanimous vote expected. He had placed the paper back in the bin without a word and gone on with his work. On the Wednesday before the board meeting, Eliza arrived at 5:45 in the morning, which was unusual even for her. Lucas was still in the office, wiping down the long conference table in the adjoining room. She did not acknowledge him. She went directly to her desk, sat down, opened her laptop, and then closed it again. She sat very still for a long moment. The kind of stillness that is not peace, but its opposite. The absolute paralysis of someone who does not know what to do next. A reflection looked back at her from the dark window. Lucas moved quietly toward the door, giving her space, the way he always did. But something stopped him. He stood at the threshold for a moment, looking at the woman who ran a $4 billion empire and had never looked more alone in his life. He reached into the pocket of his uniform and took out a small notepad. He kept for building maintenance notes. He tore off one sheet, folded it in half, and set it on the edge of her desk without a sound. Then he left. Eliza stared at the folded square of paper for a full minute before she touched it. It was plain white, the kind that came from a 50-cent notepad. She unfolded it. Inside, in handwriting that was careful and unhurried, were 3 lines. They were not advice. They were not instructions. They were not the kind of thing anyone in her world ever said out loud. They read, "The photograph is still face down. The things we protect are the things we cannot afford to lose. That is not weakness. That is the whole point." She read it 3 times. Then she did something she had not done in front of another person. In any context in more years than she could count. She cried. Not dramatically, not loudly, just the silent kind. The kind that comes from somewhere very old. the kind that means something real has been reached. She was alone in the office, but she did not feel alone. At 9:15 that morning, her assistant knocked and entered with the day's schedule. Eliza looked up, eyes clear now, and said something she had never said before in the 6 years since the company's founding.
Can you push my 10 o'clock?
I need 20 minutes to make a phone call. The phone call was to her mother, whom she had not spoken to in 4 months. It lasted 40 minutes. After that, she called her lead engineer, not to review product metrics, but to ask how the team was really doing, not performance review doing, but actually doing as people. There was a long silence on the line before he answered, because he had never been asked that question before by her. It opened something in the company that day that no algorithm had ever managed to unlock. The board meeting happened the next morning. Eliza walked into that room differently than she had ever walked into any room. She did not lead with data, though she had plenty. She began by placing the face-down photograph face up on the table. It was a picture of her at 22, standing in front of a small community center in Toledo, Ohio, where she had first learned to code through a free night class for adults. She said, "I have been running this company as though the goal was invincibility. I was wrong. The goal is connection. That is also the goal of every product we have ever built. I lost track of that. I do not intend to lose track of it again." The board did not vote to remove her. 2 of them, by the end of the meeting, were visibly moved. One said afterward that it was the most honest thing he had heard in a boardroom in 30 years. Lucas Carter did not know any of this. He came to work on Friday morning at 5, pushed his squeaky cart out of the elevator, and began his rounds. When he reached Eliza's office, he found the door open, which was unusual. On the edge of the desk, where he had left the napkin 2 days before, there was a new folded paper. He set down his supplies and opened it. It read, "I don't know your name, I should. Whatever led you here, whatever you left behind to be standing in this building at 5 in the morning, it matters. You matter. Thank you." Beneath that, in different handwriting, someone had added his name, his daughter Maya's school, and a note that his application to the computer science evening program at NYU had been fully funded anonymously for 4 years. Lucas stood alone in the glass and steel corner office, 42 floors above the city, and held the paper to his chest the way Maya held her drawings when she was proud of them. The world outside the window had started to go gold with early light. He stood there for a long time, watching it. People passed through each other's lives like weather, sometimes without leaving a trace, sometimes changing everything. Eliza Morgan went on to restructure Nexus AI around a new founding principle, which she announced publicly. That technology built without empathy was not progress, but its absence. The company became known for it. Lucas Carter completed his degree and joined the AI ethics team 3 years later, the only person on the floor who still wore a paper airplane pin on his collar. Maya made him a new one every year, each one slightly more elaborate than the last. Because she said that was how things that matter worked, they grew. None of this began with a speech or a strategy or a board vote. It began with a folded square of paper, set down in silence on the edge of a glass desk by a man nobody saw, for a woman who had forgotten what it felt like to be seen. That is how the smallest things move the heaviest worlds. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Kindness, True Stories. Every story we share is a reminder that kindness still exists.